All right, let's jump right into this. Welcome to today's explainer. We are going on a seriously fascinating journey today, one that actually starts in the darkest, weirdest corners of internet mythology and ends up at a profound, highly serious academic manifesto about the very future of humanity. I am absolutely thrilled to unpack this source material with you today, mainly because it tackles one of the most critical questions of our entire generation. As technology just keeps advancing, where exactly do we draw the line between human and machine? We're going to look at some mind-bending concepts, break down a really complex geopolitical AI race, and figure out what all of this actually means for our own minds. To kick things off, I want you to think about this. What on earth does a retro cartoon family, specifically the Jetsons, have to do with a genuinely terrifying artificial intelligence thought experiment? I know, it sounds like the setup for a bizarre sci-fi movie, right? But this strange collision between classic, mid-century cartoon nostalgia and a really dark cybernetic future is actually the perfect entry point for understanding the incredibly high stakes of modern AI and brain-computer interfaces. Which brings us to part one, the Basilisk and the Jetsons. Just picture this wild visual mix for a second. We've got the beloved retro Jetson family facing off against this terrifying cyber serpent that's emerging from a CERN wormhole, and the whole thing is controlled by Elon Musk. It's a striking contrast, right? You have the bright, cartoony optimism of the Jetsons slammed right up against the dark, modern technological paranoia of this serpent. It playfully, but very sharply, highlights modern theories about AI and the absolute risks of extreme scientific exploration. But what exactly is the cyber serpent? Well, that serpent represents something called Roko's Basilisk. Now, this isn't from a book or a movie. It's a famous 2010 thought experiment that started on a forum called Less Wrong. It's basically a technological Pascal's wager. The idea is that an all-powerful future AI will retroactively punish anyone who knew about its potential but didn't help build it. So, apologies for dooming you just by explaining this. Now, while our source notes this is widely considered just internet creepypasta or speculative fiction, it perfectly sets the stage for a very real, very serious debate about artificial intelligence. Moving right along to section 2, the future of brain interfaces. Think about how we use the web right now. We access it via external screens, keyboards, mice. We navigate web pages. But the vision for brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, like Neuralink, is entirely different. The ultimate goal here is direct, bidirectional neural communication. We're talking about a user sending commands with their thoughts and eventually receiving visual or sensory information directly back into the cortex. The long-term vision isn't just typing faster. It's literal AI symbiosis. It's about sharing a thought process and expanding the brain's processing capacity rather than just staring at an external screen. And man, this brings us to a massive question about where we actually fit into this new architecture. That leads us to section 3, terminal, peripheral, or server. So how exactly could our role change? Let's walk through these steps. Step 1 is the terminal. Here, the human is basically just input and output. You process sensory data, you send commands back. You're essentially a reader and writer for a central server. Step 2 gets a little deeper. The human becomes a gadget, basically a specialized peripheral device. In this phase, the AI uses human traits that it lacks, things like intuition, creativity, or moral judgment, to execute tasks in the physical world. You become a tool for the AI. And then we hit step 3, the server. This is by far the most dystopian level. If the connection is constant and bidirectional, the human brain could literally become a distributed biological processing node. You'd be contributing raw biological computing power to the network. At that point, you're no longer a user with a choice. You're mandatory hardware required for the system to function. And that is exactly the kind of loss of autonomy that echoes the fear behind Roko's Basilisk. So let me ask you this. If you had to choose right now, would you rather be a terminal, simply observing the network, or would you be willing to be a server, actively surrendering your biological processing power to a global intelligence? It is a really heavy question raised by the source material, because once you become a server, your participation is no longer optional. Which shifts us into some heavy territory in Section 4, the dilemma of military control. We have to remember the web was originally created for military purposes. If a network is managed by an entity with a military or hierarchical bias, a system crash isn't just a lost Wi-Fi connection anymore. It becomes a digital amputation. Whoever holds the emergency off switch controls your cognitive capacity. The system stability is always going to be prioritized over the individual. Plus, if access is total, we face the insane risk of biohacking. A criminal wouldn't just be stealing your credit card. They could theoretically intercept motor impulses or alter your actual sensory reality. In a militarized network, defense focuses on protecting the infrastructure, not the individual, which leaves users incredibly vulnerable to these kinds of backdoors. This naturally brings us to Section 5, the race for global governance. Because these risks are so huge, we are currently watching a highly complex infrastructure race unfold among global superpowers. Based directly on our sources, the United States is focusing heavily on hardware restrictions, like restricting access to advanced chips, to maintain direct command over its critical infrastructure and keep rivals from advancing too fast. China, on the other hand, presents a sort of ambivalent stance. They're warning of apocalyptic militarization scenarios, akin to the Terminator, but at the same time, they recently led the creation of WACO, the World AI Cooperation Organization, aiming to centralize global AI governance. Meanwhile, Israel is pioneering the use of AI in high-pressure security scenarios, utilizing systems like Lavender for automated targeting and complex logistical defense, completely focusing on maximum efficiency in conflict environments. So each of these powers is navigating the absolute cutting edge of AI, but with vastly different strategic priorities. But here's the real kicker. There is absolutely no central global emergency stop button. What we have instead is a deeply fragmented infrastructure race. Every superpower is just trying to ensure the network is controlled by their own security protocols. Humanity is caught right in the middle of this massive tension between allowing total access for the sake of rapid innovation and enforcing rigorous control for the sake of security. And that takes us to our final part, Section 6, the Cognitive Sovereignty Manifesto. Let's bring this whole narrative full circle, back to where we started, the Jetsons. The absolutely crucial point here is that the Jetsons were completely analog. They lived in a futuristic world and utilized incredibly advanced technology, for sure, but their individual biological humanity remained entirely intact. They used the tech, they were never defined by it. The technology was always external. It served the human, rather than the human serving the network. This exact concept forms the foundation of what our source calls a manifesto for cognitive sovereignty. The whole idea is to elevate this debate into a serious academic thesis. The goal is to pitch this concept to elite institutions, places like Harvard's Belfer Center, the Berkman Klein Center, or Stanford's HAI. These are the institutions sitting right at the intersection of technology, ethics, and national security. By framing the protection of the human mind as a collective right, the manifesto argues against algorithmic extractivism. It states that protecting our biological autonomy is a matter of critical resilience and national security. The decision-making, the ethics, and the moral compass simply must remain exclusively human. Which leads us to this incredibly powerful conclusion from the source material. It perfectly captures everything we've talked about today. It says, the true evolution might not be integrating man into the machine, but teaching man to use the machine without losing his humanity in the process. It's a profound reminder, just because we can fuse our minds with networks doesn't automatically mean we should. So, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought today. As we race toward brain-computer interfaces and global AI governance, is the ultimate step in human evolution learning to wield technology without surrendering our biological autonomy? It's a question that has moved from the realm of cartoon sci-fi right into our immediate reality. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the technology around you, and I'll catch you next time.